We started out 60 messages ago with these words. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. For many weeks, we have seen the Word and the light. We've seen Jesus living on earth, teaching, healing, dying, and rising from death. And this morning we come to the conclusion of the book of John. Google says this about conclusions. A good conclusion summarizes the main points of your work, provides a sense of closure, and leaves the reader with a lasting impression. We're spending 2 weeks on the conclusion of John's book. This is the end of the book that we've spent a lot of time studying, and as with all of John, it is full. I know that for some of you, you think, how could you go through John with 60 messages? We could have gone through John with 360 messages. It is so full. It is so rich. And we've hovered over these verses. And last week we took a general look at the first 19 verses of chapter 21. We saw Jesus performing another miracle. He was making another resurrection appearance. He helped 7 of his disciples have a huge catch of fish after they'd spent the night without a bite. We saw Jesus preparing breakfast and serving breakfast to the disciples. And finally, we saw the first conversation of this chapter. We saw the resurrected Lord forgiving and restoring Peter. Hovering over a text is good, but this morning we're going to dive down a little deeper into these verses. And we're going to be looking at the 2 conversations that close out the gospel according to John. And as we look at these conversations, and as we see Jesus restoring and forgiving Peter, we remember Peter's denial of Jesus. After vowing never to turn his back on the Lord, the very Son of God, he turned his back on Jesus 3 times in just a matter of moments. And we know that this sin, this denial, impacted Peter. It hurt him. He wept bitterly. It changed him. It was a sinful mistake. And it was one of those sinful mistakes that you look at Peter and you wonder, is he ever going to come back from it? But Jesus forgave Peter and restored their relationship. And as we look closer at that conversation, as we look at the words of Jesus, we can see that Jesus not only forgave Peter and restored their relationship, he commissioned Peter. That is, he gave him a job to do. He assigned him something to accomplish in life. He sent Peter out to do work. And in understanding this conversation between Jesus and Peter, it's important for us to remember something that's already happened in the Gospel according to John back in chapter 10. Jesus was speaking, and he spoke these words. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock and one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down. I have authority to take it up again. And this charge I received from my Father. This idea of God being a shepherd has roots that go all the way back to the Old Testament. It actually goes back to the time of David. King David wrote a song, and we know it as the 23rd Psalm. And the opening words of that psalm are these: "The Lord is my shepherd." David looked at the God of the universe. He looked at the Lord and said, "The Lord is my shepherd." This God who spoke the world into existence is David's shepherd, guiding, leading, caring for him. Everything comes to David because the Lord is his shepherd. And as the Jews listened to Jesus saying these words in John chapter 10, they knew what was going on. Jesus was making the claim that the Lord, who is the shepherd of David in the Old Testament, this Lord, this good shepherd in the Old Testament, is Jesus himself. Jesus was saying, "I am God. I am the good shepherd. This one that you've read about all these years and sung about all these years. That's me. That's me." Now, as Jesus is preparing to ascend to the Father, he is not leaving a literal flock of sheep on earth. There are sheep on earth at that time, but that's not what Jesus is talking about. Jesus is talking about people. Throughout the Bible, people and sheep are compared. And that's not a compliment to us as people. That is not a compliment. Sheep are helpless. Sheep are not the most intelligent of the animal kingdom. And Jesus is not talking about leaving literal sheep on earth. He's saying, I'm leaving people on earth. I am the good shepherd, and I'm about to leave. And so, as Jesus is leaving, he has restored and forgiven Peter, and now he also gives him a job to do. The good shepherd assigns to Peter the care of his flock. In other words, Jesus commissions Peter to oversee and care for his church. Now, this is remarkable in so many ways. The guy who completely denied Jesus, who absolutely blew it, who was torn apart by what he'd done, is restored and forgiven and given a task to do. Jesus gave him this really important thing to do, and this conversation that Jesus and Peter had probably takes place as they're walking along the Sea of Galilee on the beach. And Jesus asks Peter almost the same thing 3 times in a row. Peter gives almost the same answer 3 times in a row. And Jesus gives almost the same command 3 times in a row. You kind of get the idea that the number 3 is rather important here. And we remember what the number 3 must have meant in Peter's life. He denied Jesus 3 times. "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Jesus is saying, as you look around here, you see your buddies here. You said you loved me supremely over all. Do you love me more than these? "Simon, son of John, do you love me? Simon, son of John, do you love me?" 3 times. Jesus asked him. Peter's answer is almost identical. "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And finally, exasperated, Peter says, "Lord, you know everything. You know I love you." Peter knows that Jesus is God. He can't hide anything from Jesus. It was a lack of love that led Peter to deny Jesus. At the time that Peter turned his back on Jesus, he loved his life more than Jesus. He loved his reputation more than Jesus. He loved his job more than Jesus. And so it was important for Jesus to ask 3 times, do you love me? And Jesus gave a command to Peter 3 times. Feed my lambs. For those of you that are not farmers, lambs are baby or adolescent sheep that have not reached adulthood yet. Jesus said, feed my lambs, feed my sheep, feed my sheep. Or feed my lambs, tend my sheep, feed my sheep. And when Jesus uses the words lamb and sheep, he's referring to a flock of sheep, which is not just one size fits all. You've got sheep of all different size and shape. You've got young sheep. You've got older sheep. He's acknowledging the variety of the flock. We cross over to what Jesus means when he talks about a flock, and we think of people. There are all different sizes of people. There are all different maturities represented in people. The flock isn't one size fits all. And the shepherd has to be ready to care for all the sheep in the flock. Jesus uses almost the same word as he tells Peter what to do with the flock, how to be a shepherd. He uses the word feed twice, and he uses the word tend once. Feeding sheep is making sure that they have regular food and water. They can't survive without that. Tending sheep is a little bit more particular care. Sheep may be stuck in a bush. They may have fallen over when they are full of their fur, and they may need to be rolled back over and helped to stand up. They may have hurt their foot. They need overseeing and handling all the time. And so Jesus, in using the word feed twice and the word tend, is basically saying to Peter, watch over the flock, whatever they're going through. When they need food, when they need water, when they fall down, when they need to be guided, feed them, tend them, take care of them. Don't miss what Jesus is doing. He's forgiven, he's restored Peter, and he is giving Peter the job of caring for his people that he's about to leave on earth. For 2,000 years, this has been what leaders in God's church are all about. Taking care of God's people, feeding them, giving them the only food for which they cannot survive without, and that is His Word. Tending them, taking care of the different things that go in their lives in a wrong way. And in verses 18 and 19 again, Jesus tells Peter that when he is old, he's going to lose his freedom. Someone else will dress him and take him where he doesn't want to go. And then Jesus gives Peter that last command: follow me. What Peter hears from Jesus in this chapter are 3 things. Believe in me, love me, and follow me. And I hope that's what you hear from Jesus, and I hope that's what you've heard in this entire book of John. Believe in me. Love me. And follow me. God's Word is always doing work in our lives. It's alive, it's living and active, it's equipping, preparing, convicting, training all the time. And on Mother's Day, May 11th, 2025, we need this. We need to be reminded that when it comes to Jesus, the 3 big areas of our lives are believing, loving, and following. And they're all related, they all go together. But we need to believe and love and follow. And if you've never done that, do it today. John 3:16 tells us that it's through believing in Jesus that we're saved. True belief also leads us to love, and true belief is following Jesus. Conversation number 2 in these verses actually builds on conversation number 1. Peter and Jesus are walking along the Sea of Galilee. Peter looks back, and John is following them. And he's the one who leaned back against Jesus during the supper and said, "Lord, who is it that's going to betray you?" Verse 21, when Peter saw John, he said to Jesus, "Lord, what about this man?" And Jesus said to him, "If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? You follow me." So the saying spread abroad among the brothers that this disciple was not to die. And Jesus did not say to him that he was not to die, but, "If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you?" Peter looks behind. He's walking with Jesus. And he sees John. Was John special? Did John have a special connection to Jesus? Probably in some way. We're not sure what this was all about, but yes, John had a different relationship with Jesus than Peter had. And Jesus explained this to Peter. The circumstances of John's life don't concern Peter. What matters is that Peter believes, Peter loves, and Peter follows. If I say FOMO, how many of you know what I'm talking about? Fear of missing out. Living in this instant world, we suffer from FOMO. We see everything that everyone does, and we don't want to miss out on anything. Peter was no different. He looked at John and feared that he was missing out. It's a great thing to live and grow with other believers in a church family like Calvary Church. However, there's something that happens in every family with multiple children, and this behavior is known as sibling rivalry. As children, we naturally look at our siblings, and we are absolutely, positively convinced that our parents, our dad or our mom, loves our siblings more than us, gives them better gifts, spends more time with them, cares more about their sports teams. Parents are not perfect. They do treat their children unequally from time to time. But most of the time, kids are out to lunch on this, aren't they? Parents bend over backwards to try to love their children equally and treat them equally. Peter looks at John. He got to sit right next to Jesus at the Last Supper, the last night Jesus was on earth with the disciples. He was at the cross when Jesus died, when Peter was out hiding away like a little chicken. Jesus' mom now lives with John. And Peter just had to be restored. John didn't need to be restored, but Peter did. And here's John walking along behind them. And Peter is forgiven and restored, but Peter is Peter. And he looks back. And even though he was forgiven and restored, Jesus, what about him? What about him? Some people thought that Jesus was saying about John that he wasn't going to die. John makes sure that he communicates that's not what Jesus was saying, but Jesus said to Peter, "What is that to you? You follow me." Today, some of you are here suffering a lot. Some of you are suffering a little. Some of you are flying high today. It's Mother's Day, breakfast in bed, lunch out at Wendy's. But if you're going through a rough patch of life, it is really possible that you look around at others who are not going through a rough patch and say, Lord, what about them? What about them? Our tendency is to think that God loves us less if we have a heavy burden. If it looks heavier than other people's burdens, we tend to think that God doesn't care about us as much. It's good to know that Peter did follow Jesus. He believed and followed Jesus for about 30 years before Emperor Nero crucified him upside down at his request. Nearer to the end of his life, he wrote a couple of short letters. And at the end of his first short letter, he wrote these words: I exhort the elders among you as a fellow elder and witness of the sufferings of Christ, as well as a partaker in the glory that is going to be revealed. Shepherd the flock of God. Shepherd the flock of God that is among you, exercising oversight, not under compulsion, but willingly as God would have you, not for shameful gain, but eagerly, not domineering over those in your charge, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the unfading crown of glory. Peter believed, loved, and followed. 5 years after I finished my seminary work, I hit a period of discouragement. I've shared different periods of discouragement with many of you. After 5 years out in the ministry world, all my friends that I'd known in ministry were in places where they were advancing, and they were able to move into normal life. And the situation that I was in put me and my family in a holding pattern. We were just there, unable to go anywhere. We were just there. And I called a mentor of mine, Dr. Vernon Grounds, who was much, much older than me and much, much wiser than me. And he invited me to have lunch with him at Fratelli's restaurant. And we sat in a booth, and Dr. Grounds listened and listened and listened to a young idiot. And he didn't say much, but after a while, he turned to me, and he often did this. He grabbed my hand on the table, and he said, "It matters not to thee. Follow thou me." That's the King James Version of these verses that we just looked at. It matters not to thee. Follow thou me. He reminded me that God is doing something completely unique in your life, Steve Kolb. And the life of a Christian is not a one-size-fits-all. As children of God, each one of us is unique. We're not the same. And the suffering and the discipline that God brings to my life is unique to me, not your experience necessarily. And the experience that God brings to your life is not necessarily my experience. Because God is doing something completely unique in your life and in my life. What is that to you? You follow me. The last two verses of the Gospel of John. Now there were also many other things that Jesus did. Were every one of them to be written, I suppose that the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. the one that spoke the world into existence, the Word, the everlasting light. The world would not be a big enough library to record all that He did. And John says, as I close this book, I just want to remind you, this is a little pea in the ocean of all that Jesus has done. I was just talking to Tim Trowbridge before the message today, and I told him, this has been a rough week for me. I have a little bit of a perfectionist streak. Preaching the last message on the Gospel of John is a lot of pressure. How do you pull all of this together in one message? This wasn't adequate. This was just a little pea of an idea. But there are final thoughts this morning from the Gospel of John and from this 21st chapter. Always remember from John, believe, love, follow. Believe, love, follow. John wrote this book so that we might believe and have life, real life. And that comes through believing and loving and following Jesus. And then some obvious things that kind of flow out of this text that aren't popular in our country today. Number one, sheep belong in a flock. Sheep belong in a flock. We were talking today in the core seminar on prayer about the importance of God's people praying together. We live in such an individualistic society, we find it difficult to gather together. We find it difficult to depend on others. We want to be independent. We don't want to be dependent on anyone. And yet God calls us to live in a flock with other sheep. Some of them might even be dumber than us. Sheep belong in a flock. And shepherds belong with the sheep. If you take the sheep away from a shepherd, there is no shepherd. Sheep belong in a flock, and shepherds belong with the sheep. May God use the Gospel of John at Calvary Church. May He use it in your heart and your life for days and weeks, months and years to come. Believe, love, and follow. And enjoy this flock. Would you stand? Jesus, we thank you that your flock will grow. We thank you that you will reach other sheep and bring them into the flock. And God, we do believe that you are the good shepherd, and we believe that you have put this flock together. You are our shepherd, and you provide for us under shepherds to lead us and guide us and feed us and tend us. And so today, may we celebrate the fact that this isn't the end of this flock. There are other sheep to come into this flock. There are other sheep to be reached throughout the world. Jesus, you reign. We praise you. We praise your name. Amen.